All right, hello again, pre-calculus people. It's been a while. It is the first day of class in the second semester, January 2021. So most of this semester we're going to be talking about trigonometry. But before we get into kind of the real part of trig, we got to set a couple of kind of base work and just going back to what we talked about even in geometry, in fact even in middle school, and talking about kind of what an angle is and how we measure them and stuff like that. So in today's video and notes, all we're going to talk about is angles in degree measurements, how we can measure them, and something called coterminal angles. Okay, so before we even get into that, though, let's talk about a little bit of vocabulary. So remember from geometry, or you're going to even middle school, what is an angle? An angle is two rays that meet at a vertex, right? And what we talk about is an angle has an initial side and a terminal side. So the initial side is literally where it starts. In other words, it's where we're going to start the measurement from. And then the terminal side is where it ends. But now that we're in pre-calculus, we're going to start talking about these things in a very specific kind of orientation. It's what we call standard position. So what standard position means is when the initial side is on the positive x-axis. Okay, so every angle from this moment forward, our angles are going to be in standard position. So in other words, my first ray, that initial side, is always going to be on the positive x-axis. Always, always, always. Okay, and then the terminal side can be anywhere. I mean, I'm just going to kind of draw a random one up here because who cares where it is. That would be your terminal side. And they can be anywhere, okay? Now, even on that angle, that random angle that I drew, we can actually measure that in a couple of different ways, okay? So we can measure it in a positive direction, and what that means is we're going to be measuring it from the initial side in a counterclockwise direction. So from the initial side in counterclockwise direction. Okay, so in other words, if I'm measuring this angle that I drew here in the positive direction, it's going to start here and we're going to measure it that way. And we can get a protractor or whatever. You're not going to have to do that in here, obviously, but that would be your positive measurement or positive angle. Okay. Now, for a negative angle, we're still going to start at the initial side, but now we're going to be measuring it going in a clockwise direction. So most of this is the same. Okay, so again, the exact same angle, visually, it doesn't look any different. But now we can start here and measure it coming back around this way. And that would be a negative measurement. Okay, angle looks the same. It's just two different ways to write the exact same angle. Okay, and we'll talk about how to do that in just one second. and kind of how to find those things. Because even these two angles here, the positive angle or the negative angle, depending on the direction, those are what we call coterminal angles. Okay, so this is your term right here, coterminal angles. It is the same angle, angles that have same initial and terminal sides. Okay, so how do you find them? We basically just do laps, basically, you know. And if you're, I think you all probably know this, but especially if you're a skater, what does it mean to take a whole lap around a circle? How many degrees is in a whole lap? Well, it's 360. So if you want to find a positive coterminal angle, as long as you know like the initial angle in like the standard position, then you can find any positive coterminal angles just by adding 360 to the given angle. I call that adding a lap. Because one lap is 360 degrees. And then a negative coterminal angle, well, go figure, instead of adding, we're going to subtract. That's all there is to it. And you can just you can think of that as taking away lap, basically. Okay. Now look, every angle is going to have an infinite number of coterminal angles. You're not going to have to write a lot of them, but I'm going to ask you for one of each. So like one positive angle and one negative angle as a coterminal angle. I'm also going to ask you about the quadrants. So let's do just a very, very quick review of quadrants before we get into kind of doing the examples here. So there's my XY axis. Remember, we have 4 quadrants. Starts on the top right, so there's quadrant 1, and then it kind of does like a C shape. So quadrant 2, quadrant 3, quadrant 4. Sometimes you might see that written as Roman numerals, whatever. I don't care about that. Okay. Also remember kind of what your angles are on the actual axis. So again, in that positive direction, we'll start with 0, 90 degrees up there, 180 down over here, 270 on the bottom y-axis, and then back up to 360. And if I'm going in a negative direction, it's still going to be 0. So that doesn't change, but now this is negative 90 degrees, negative 180, negative 270, and negative 360. Okay, the quadrants do not change. It's just a matter of, again, the direction in which we're being measured in and kind of where the quadrant is. Okay, so number 1, so we have theta equals 75 degrees. So think to yourself, what quadrant is 75 degrees in? It's positive. It's less than 90, so that means we're in quadrant 1. And if we're doing a coterminal angle, again, 360 is all you got to remember. So we're going to take 75 plus 360, which would be 435. For the negative coterminal angle, we do 75 minus 360, which is negative 2a5. And that's literally all there is to it. First day back, nice easy day for us. How about number 2, though? So now we have theta is negative 60 degrees. So think to yourself for a second, if I'm going in a negative direction and it's negative 60 degrees, what quadrant is that going to be in? Well, it's going to be in quadrant 4, right? Because again, going that negative direction, what I wrote in red there, from 0 to negative 90, quadrant 4. So that's where negative 60 degrees would be. But for the coterminal, we do exactly the same thing. So negative 60 plus 360 would be 300 degrees for your positive coterminal angle. Negative 60 minus 360 would be negative 420 degrees for your negative coterminal angle. And then last one, again, if you want to pause the video real quick and do the last one on your own, the quadrant would be in quadrant 3. Again, bigger than 180, less than 270, so quadrant 3. But we still do the same thing. So 213 plus 360 is 563. No, it's not 573. Sorry about that. And then for the negative coterminal, which would be negative 147. Okay, so that is the very beginning of it. I wanted to keep this one short as we get into this. On the next video, we're going to talk about a different way to measure angles, which is in radians. So the next video, we'll talk about what a radian is and how to convert back and forth from radians to degrees, and revisiting coterminal angles in terms of radians instead of degrees. Okay, so that is all for this video. As always, ask questions, keep up with the work, and until next time, stay safe.